Welcome to episode 3 of Math and Woodworking. Today we're going to be going over some trigonometry and how to find an angle given that you've already got two sides. So we're going to have to do like inverse tangent, inverse cosine, or inverse sine, and then figure out the angle, make some cuts, and then get going. This step in the process of building my dad's office is actually the reason I wanted to start this math and woodworking series, because it has the trig in there and it has something that's just kind of out there and a little bit different that most people might not think about. So I hope you guys enjoy the process. Go ahead and take a look, and then when I'm done finishing this step, making the desktop and everything with all the math involved, I'll go ahead and post a link in the description below. So thank you guys for checking in, and let's see what we got. For the desktop on my dad's office that I'm building, I'm going to have a frame, a 1x4 frame going around the entire top, and then at some points there's going to be a little split in it with a piece coming down to connect up to the other section over here. And I need to figure out exactly what kind of angle I'm going to need on these pieces. I've already done some test cuts, already did a little bit of math earlier, but I'm going to walk you guys through the process. My angle's off by maybe like 1/4 of a degree. There's a little bit of gap in there. Maybe one of the boards is not quite straight with the cut. But I'm going to walk you guys through the process on how to figure out that exact angle right here, with each of these boards being 3.5 inches wide, and then having this angled piece come in at a 90-degree angle. Alright, so let's see what we can figure out. If I'm going to have these two boards coming together at whatever angle that is, and then extending out, continuing on, and then have this one piece that's the same width right here as these boards are, I got to figure out what angle cut I need to make for these guys. So let's take a couple notes real quick. I'm just going to go ahead and break this down. Here's one board, two boards, three boards. I'm going to break this down to where I'm just making one right triangle right here. I'm going to figure out what this angle theta is going to be. Alright, some notes. Once again, I said this is a 1x4 board, but it's real important to know that a 1x4 board is actually 3.5 inches wide. So I'm going to go ahead and jot that down there, 3.5 inches wide for this distance. And it should be the same for each of these guys as well. Okay, taking that into account, if I've got the same angles right here on both sides of this middle piece, that means they're going to meet together right at the halfway point. So if I think about cutting that board straight in half, that point is going to be right in the middle of that board. So with that information in mind, if this board is also 3.5 inches wide, and I'm going to cut that in half, that means this distance right here should be 1.75 inches wide, or 1 3/4 inches if you're thinking about it like that. Alright, so now with this information, I got to figure out what that angle is, and then I can figure out what this angle is too, no problem. We'll just go one at a time, because it's not really that big of a deal. If I got one, I can find the other easily, because this guy is 90 degrees. Okay, so things to think about. I've got, using a little bit of trig, if I'm going to figure out what that angle is, and I've got two sides. I've got the opposite side right here, which is 3.5, and I've got the adjacent side to this angle, which is 1.75. Okay, here's my hypotenuse right here, so I'm going to either use sine, cosine, or tangent. And if you're familiar with your trig functions or your trig identities, if I've got opposite and adjacent, that means I'm going to be using tangent. So let's go ahead and jot that down right here. Okay, tangent of theta should be opposite over adjacent. Okay, if you're thinking SOHCAHTOA or however you think of that or memorize that, let's make sure we got that down. So tangent of theta is opposite over adjacent. So the information I have is opposite and adjacent. So I'm going to go ahead and plug that in. So tangent of theta is opposite over adjacent, so 3.5 over 1.75. 3.5 over 1.75. Okay. Now going a little bit further, I'm just going to do this in my head. Oh, let's go ahead and see it to where you guys can see it. Doing it in my head, I'm going to pull this over here actually. Tangent of theta equals, I told you that 1.75 is half the distance of that 3.5 inch board. So if I do 3.5 divided by 1.75, that should just give me 2. Okay. Now with our calculator, I'm going to have to use that. I got to figure out what theta is, given that tangent of theta is 2. So that means we're going to have to take our tangent inverse and take the tangent inverse of that 2. So let's go ahead and pull out our handy dandy calculators here and see what we can figure out. Okay, if you didn't know, on your iPhone, you can actually do this as long as you unlock the screen right there. Unlock the screen, and then you can pull up the calculator and then turn it, whoop, and turn it sideways. Show that again. Regular calculator, turn it sideways. You got all these information, all these different buttons here. So there's our tangent button, but that's not quite tangent inverse. In order to do that, we got to hit second, and there's our tangent inverse. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and clear that out. We just have to plug in our 2 right here. So I'm going to hit 2, and I'm going to find the tangent inverse of that. Once again, we got to hit second, and then hit tangent inverse. Okay, so if we're making sure we're in degrees, that is 64 or 63.4349 degrees. So right there, I'm just going to say 63.5, 63.5 degrees, maybe a hair under. Okay, so that means that theta right there is 63.5 degrees. Let me go ahead and jot that down. Theta equals 63 point, I'm going to go ahead and say that 43 right there. I'm going to say almost a half. Okay, there's our theta in degrees. So now with that information, we can go ahead and tackle these cuts. So I'll take you over to the miter saw, and then we'll get that squared away. Alright, here's my miter saw. So once again, that angle is 63.43 degrees, or almost 64, or 63.5. Over on the left, I only can go over to 45 degrees, and over here on the right, I can actually go to 60. Okay, unfortunately, I need 63 and almost a half, so I really can't fudge that either way. Can't really pull it over to the right because it only goes up to 60, and I need 3.5 more degrees. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 90 degrees minus that 63.43, and that should give me right at 26.5, or just a little bit more than 26.5 degrees, to find that missing angle, or that third angle. And I'm going to kind of orient the boards a little bit different. So here's my little ticker right here. Let me zoom into that just so you guys can see here, that indicator. That is just sitting on the left side of 0, so I'm going to keep that information in mind when I turn this angle, so that way I can be just barely on the left side of where I need to be. Alright? So that angle that I need to be at is 26.57. So let's see what we can do. So there's 15, there's 22.5, there's 25, so there's 26 and a half right there. 26.5, but I'm just going to go bump it just a hair more. And let's go ahead and zoom into that so we can see what's going on. Okay, once again, there's 15, 20, 25 is that darker line under there, 26, and then 26 and just a hair more than a half. Alright, that's what I'm shooting for. So let's see what we got. Alright, these two boards are already cut, but I'm going to go ahead and recut them using just this right side right here, and that will give me my 26.5 degree angle. I'm just going to recut them so that way you guys can see that I'm actually doing something here. So I'm just going to line it up, shave a little bit off the edge. One. I'm going to pull the second one up here, and we'll do the same thing. In order to cut this angle right here, I've got to actually turn my board a little bit different way. So I'm actually going to be pointing it straight into the saw as opposed to off to the right, since I didn't have that 63.5 degree angle right here. So I'm going to have to put it straight in. In order to do that though, I can't hold my hand still, and I can't hold that board still to make a nice solid straight even cut. So what I did is I got a big piece of wood and then made sure to square up the edge right here 90 degrees. So here's the part that's going to be resting up against the fence. Here's the part that I'm going to be resting my board on. So it's real important to make sure that you got a solid 90 degree angle right there, or it's not going to work out. So I'm going to go ahead and check that real quick just so we can see. There's a nice 90 degree angle. There's no gaps in there, no extra movement, so we should be good. Technically, to get started, the edge of this board right here should be exactly 1.75 inches from where the blade hits. That's going to be a little bit hard to measure with the blade at an angle right here, so I'm just going to do a rough estimate. And there's my 1.75 or 1 3/4. if I lay it down, it's right at the edge of the blue, which means I shouldn't cut it just yet. I don't want to overcut, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a first cut, and then if I need to, I'll ease this board in, or my little my setup board. So let's see how it goes. Okay, taking the board all the way against the edge, sliding it straight in. I'm just going to check the blade, make sure we don't get too close, and man, that's real close already, so that's good. Let's see what we got. Alright, really close, so I'm only going to ease that in maybe a 32nd of an inch, and we'll see what happens on cut number 2. That looks to be money right there. There's my 3.5 inch mark. That angled line is just about there. So I'm going to take the board, I'm going to flip it over. What's real important is that you've got some kind of stop back here for this part, because notice you cut off this angle already, so we got to make sure we have a chunk so that way we can keep it stopped, and I've got a spot right there that it will stop on. So up against the left, pushing back. This one, once you cut away your support over here on the right side on the back, you got to make sure that our board doesn't get sucked in, so we got to push down a little firm. Here we go. That looks to be just perfect. Didn't overcut any. There's a nice angle right there. Let's see how we did on our line. There's our 3.5 inch line. That line is also just about right there. We could have a winner right here. Alright, let's see what we got. Put those guys together, slide this one in, and really dang close. So there's some inconsistencies here, just barely over here on the top, and then just barely right over here. So maybe one of these cuts just wasn't exactly a straight cut. I'm going to say it was this guy, this middle piece, since the setup was off. But this guy was pretty dang good. Alright, so maybe we got some angle in the board somewhere. That should be an easy fix, because that's no more than like a 64th of an inch or something. That's really tiny. There's the second one that I just cut. The first one, my first test cut before I started filming. This is what that guy looked like. So a lot different over here on this left side as opposed to the right side. Alright, so going back to this guy. There we go. We should be set up to make some pretty good cuts for this desktop. So follow along in the process, and then I'll check in with you guys later. Thanks.